For some reason, on average, Japanese games have far more stylish box art. Even a small TV show tie-in game like Cowboy Bebop for PS1 goes extremely hard with its cover. So much swag, it could do with a warning before being shown on screen. The danger though, if you're into your Japanese imports, is getting tricked by one of these cool covers into jumping on something subpar, which is why I'm here to let you know what you're getting into with Bandai's PS1 Cowboy Bebop game. Cowboy Bebop was a show that aired in the late 90s about a crew of space-wandering bounty hunters in 2071, and is one of the greatest TV programs of all time. So good that I make a point to rewatch it once a year. It was a thoughtful, soulful, funny, exciting, genre-melding, artistic triumph. But it didn't have that reputation when this game came out, because apparently this was released after only 6 episodes of the show had aired. Only a month and a half after the premiere, and it wasn't exactly a normal premiere. When it first aired, the network in question decided to skip episodes, seemingly the most violent ones, and this included the first episode, which means this game released before the first episode of the show was even out, and a mere 2 weeks after the character Radical Edward was introduced at all. So this isn't an adaptation of an already well-known, beloved work aiming to build on its legacy. It's not even a cash-in made to capitalize on a popular franchise. Instead, it's another piece of artillery in a marketing blitz attempting to establish a new media property by saturating as many mediums as possible with it. Back in the 90s, when dev turnarounds were shorter, this is something you could actually do. Nowadays, video game tie-ins are unlikely to be released alongside what they're adapting. It's harder to get those releases in sync. You can tell this was made during the show's production and not after it had established its cultural footprint the moment you boot it up and hear the title screen. Nowadays, bebop is well known for combining sci-fi with blues and jazz. Many different musical genres made an appearance, but if you were gonna distill the soul of bebop down to one mood, it would probably be a jazzy one, not 80s pop rock training montage music. And in case you were wondering, yes, the music here was made by a different composer than the show. What you'll hear here isn't bad, it's just not very bebop. I'm gonna be real, this is a big knock against the game, because part of the reason you might buy a game tie-in is to soak up the atmosphere of a show's universe in an interactive space, while here you won't be getting the same mood like at all. The story doesn't really deliver on this front either, as it basically sidesteps the setting of Bebop entirely. The opening shows the Bebop crew chillin', watching some kind of space fantasy drama, before getting sucked through a portal to an alternate dimension where they'll be tasked with taking on the kind of giant city-sized space stations more likely to appear in Star Wars. Cowboy Bebop takes place in the future, and humanity have expanded out into space, but they've done so in a fairly unglamorous, unimpressive way, with rusty old space freighters and trucks. There aren't any impressive moon-sized Galacto stations. There's no Star Destructada. Again, you get the sense the studio were told the basic premise and who the main cast were, but decided to go for this alternate dimension premise just to sidestep any contradictions they might end up making with the show, and to allow themselves the freedom to come up with whatever kind of stuff they wanted to. The game is a space shooter similar to Star Fox. You shoot your way through a linear on-rails tunnel of enemies until a boss fight at the end that sometimes takes you off the linear tunnel and into an arena where you can move freely. You have to do the whole level with one health bar though, so staying alert even from the very start is important. Spinning helps, that's a good trick. You have machine gun fire and a second special weapon that takes a moment to recharge after use. The second fire is initially a big laser, but you can unlock missiles and an electric shock thing. That's another fun element of this game. Perform well in a level, and you'll get points to unlock new gear between stages, which is a rewarding feeling. Tricking out Spike Spiegel's ship, the Swordfish 2, your guns have a satisfying punch to them, and the exaggerated size of the explosions your trail of bullets will leave behind is ridiculous, making the blasting all the more satisfying. Visually, for the most part, the levels are pretty basic. The Sunset Canyon at the start and the city skyline in Stage 2 get the job done nicely enough. But then the Brown Village in Stage 3 looks a lot more dull, and the pop-in goes from evident to crazy evident. The ship spraying the water of the rivers around if you get close, though, is a nice touch. That all said, the game did shock me in Stage 4, with an extremely cool-looking level I didn't see coming. The way the stars here leave a blurry trail as you move your view around creates a striking, bold effect. For my first run of the game, I played through on a CRT, and the dark blacks and softening effects of the screen gave this stage a real dreamlike feel. Now, is this very helpful for actually being able to tell very well what's going on? Well, no. But it helps create the feeling and illusion as you dodge about that you're spinning and gliding through the infinity of space, in a way I haven't seen many other gaming space battles achieve. After this, though, the game kind of sticks to a series of grey space corridors, but it's cool while it lasts. I also have to point out that in Stage 4 here, the characters from the TV show in the opening get a few lines. But the context this time is that their voices aren't coming out of a TV show, but that they're real and involved in the battle you're doing. I get that this is supposed to be humorous, and it is. The Bebop crew were watching some Star Wars-like show, and then they get transported to a Star Wars-like dimension where characters like this actually exist. Humanoid dog alien guys. But it also implies the Bebop got sucked into a TV show, and while I have disclosed that to you, my loyal viewers, let's not tell too many people about this. Let's not let this one reach the wiki or anything. Visuals are one thing, but this game's biggest problem is probably its camera. For a game that's largely on rails, where the camera just has to follow behind the player and let them see where they can go, it manages to make bad situations so much worse somehow. At times it feels like you have to fight against it and try to go out of bounds to avoid certain obstacles in a way that feels unnatural. The game could have also done with a break button for its few free-range boss fights, to make flying in for runs on the boss less finicky. Regardless of whether you understand Japanese or not, what everyone is prattling on about, it's easy to get caught up in the final set piece. I won't show it here, but it's a satisfying and tense way to end the game. Contextually, quite different to what you'd see on the show, but it's a time-sensitive mission, which is usually what Spike in his Swordfish is subjected to when he has to use it to throw down in an episode. When looking up when the game released, I decided to not just take Wikipedia's word for it, with no source attached. We know how that can turn out sometimes. So I did some digging, and in an issue of Dengeki PlayStation from April 98, I confirmed that yes, Cowboy Bebop PS1 was scheduled for release on May 14th. But also next to it they had the price, 5,800 yen, which in today's money is about 32 quid, but adjusted for inflation would have been about 60 quid back then, 72 US dollars. And that seems insane for such a short game based on a show that had barely even properly come out yet. You can beat it in an hour. Back in 98, you'd be paying about 10 quid per level. There's no unlockables, there's not even a save function to back up high scores. After you beat it, there's not really anything more to do, other than just replaying for the heck of it. And unfortunately, the game goes for about 60 quid used today, too. Unless you're a really unhinged Bebop completionist and you want that box art on your shelf, it's hard to justify. For everybody else, maybe consider burning it off. You know, all those excess calories at the gym. It may not have as much going on as a Star Fox 64 or a Panzer Dragoon Zwei, but there's a charming simplicity to this one that those others lack. With no gimmick segments or narrative flourishes breaking up gameplay, it's just pure shit blasting from start to end, with smoother, less heavy and deliberate movement than those other titles, making for some faster-paced action. There are some long cutscenes here, but they can be skipped and you can get right into the action. And I might catch myself doing so again, sooner than later. Ironically, in 2005, Bandai put out a PS2 Cowboy Bebop game that didn't just emulate the jazz soundtrack of the show, but just straight up used tracks from the show. This makes it kind of hard to talk about at all on YouTube, because even trying to upload some gameplay of it unlisted gets the video blocked worldwide, at least when I tested it out. The copyright check system locking onto those tracks immediately, as well as flagging just visual material, surprisingly, as that game recreates some imagery from the show almost one-to-one. This is a good excuse for not talking about the show itself, if even just footage of the PS2 game sets off the alarms here. Believe it or not, I have much more profound thoughts about the show than on its tie-in game media, and having to make a video about the show itself while dodging copyright checks would be a real hassle. But maybe there's more to it than that. Something more selfish. Something more risk-averse. What if I open up about it and nobody cares? And the things I thought were so deep don't make that much of an impact? That's the risk you take when you talk about art publicly, and maybe I want the ideas I have about certain things I like to go untested, unscrutinized. I've chosen video games as the medium to opine on with my online show. At some point I will probably offer up every profound opinion I have about all the games I have profound things to say about. But does that process need to apply to every other medium I consume too? Or can I keep some deep thoughts on some of the art I enjoy to myself, and not try to share them with a worldwide audience, which is what most people used to do? I'm not sure what I'll ultimately do, but until I've decided, it's not like we can't enjoy our adventures together, even if we don't know everything about each other.